All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to join us today. My name is Nora Wang Esram, the Senior Director for Research of ACEEE. I oversee ACEEE's Buildings, Transportation, Industry, and Behavior programs. In case you're new to our webinar, ACEEE is a nonprofit research organization based in Washington, D.C. We develop policies to reduce energy waste and combat climate change. We have been working with federal legislators and agencies and state and local governments on domestic energy policy for industrial for over 3 decades. For example, we co-led DOE's Industrial Decarbonization Roadmap released by DOE last year. We also authored the State Policy Guidebook for Industry published by U.S. Climate Alliance. We played an instrumental role in developing some of the energy provisions in IRA, such as the Advanced Industrial Facilities Deployment Program, or AIFD. The program is administered by DOE's Office of Clean Energy Demonstration. The funding opportunity was announced in March this year. Some of you may have gone through the proposal process. Our team learned so much through that process too, in particular on development of community benefits plan. That's one reason for which we believe it will be beneficial to invite experienced speakers to discuss how companies can partner with the communities to develop robust community benefits plan, and more importantly, how to use federal decarbonization funding to positively impact local communities. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our 4 speakers today are Ann Hampson from the U.S. Department of Energy, Anna Johnson from ACEEE, Pat Phelan from Arizona State University, and Dana Harmon from Juniper Advisory Group. Next slide, please. We'll have the agenda slide. Okay, never mind. I'll start. We'll have 10 minutes for each speaker to share their knowledge, followed by a panel discussion. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A box. If we don't have time to answer your questions during our webinar, we'll try to follow up with you after the webinar. The webinar will be recorded and posted on our website, and the presentation slides will be available to our attendees. Okay, so before I turn to our first speaker, and I have 3 polling questions to help us learn about your interests and challenges. Nick, can you please start poll number 1? Thank you. All right, hopefully this one is as straightforward to answer. We'll keep it short. Maybe 10 more seconds. All right, Nick, I think that's enough time. Can you please close the poll, maybe show the results? Okay, 75% of the attendees haven't been involved in a DOE proposal in the last year, 25 with some experience. All right, so let's pull the second one, please, Nick. All right, where were the barriers you encountered? Maybe for the 25%. For the 70%, if you haven't applied, what would you anticipate being your challenges? And if you choose other, and you can put your, we would appreciate if you can put your answer in the chat box, so we'll be able to see what are the other challenges were not captured here. All right, I'll be quiet to maybe give you 30 seconds to read and think a little bit. Okay, Nick, can you please close the poll and share the results? All right, interesting. I guess the highest one is the lack of staff time to develop the community benefit plan, and followed by the others equally distributed among the 3 challenges and some are others. Okay. All right, let's do the third one, please, Nick. So the third one is about assistance or resources you may need in order to help you develop effective community benefits plan. It says single choice here. Can they be multiple choice? Sorry.
I can't fix that on the spot. Sorry about that.
Okay. No worries. Maybe choose the most helpful one. And knowing that multiple resources can definitely be more helpful. If there are other assistance you may need, and please enter your answers in the chat box. All right, shall we review the answers? Okay, thanks, Nick. It looks like a training is most needed, followed by the additional information and clarity on community benefit subsections, as well as connecting with community-based organizations. Thank you so much, Nick. Hopefully this will give our speakers some understanding of the audience and interests and challenges, and thank you all for your participation. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Ann Hampson from DOE. Ann is leading DOE's Technical Assistance and the Workforce Development Program to support development and validation of technologies and practice to increase the productivity and the competitiveness of American manufacturers and other energy-using facilities. Today, Ann is going to talk about upcoming DOE funding opportunities and resources to support development and implementation of community benefits plan. Please take away, Ann.
Thanks so much, Nora. Yeah, you can dive right in. We don't need the title slide too much. I come from our industrial efficiency and decarbonization office, as Nora mentioned, and so we are kind of in the trenches here trying to help manufacturers think about what types of energy efficiency and decarbonization opportunities they have at their disposal to do projects within their facilities. And so I wanted to highlight some of the funding opportunities that are currently open, and there are a few that I'll highlight specifically, but really wanted to start with this page or this slide that has some of the resources where you can go in and find like an exhaustive listing of all of the funding opportunities currently available. So through our energy.gov website, there is a site that we put together for specific to industrial funding opportunities. The Department of Energy focuses on a lot of different technology readiness levels of industrial technologies. So that means we focus on really basic research and development. We focus on demonstrations. We do things on deployment and technical assistance. And so there are funding opportunities at any of those phases throughout a technology's development. And so this page will really help you focus in on what types of things are going on with your facility and what types of opportunities are out there. There's also, through our Better Buildings, Better Plants program, is a funding and incentives resource hub. So that has a broader view of incentives. So it's not just the industrial space, it also has commercial ones, but it has some unique ways you can filter the resources. So I also wanted to include that. Everything that's on, for the industrial page will also be, here, but sometimes different web interfaces can help you sort through things differently. And then I also included our IEDO funding opportunities landing page that has more information on specifically the office that I come from. And when we have new funding opportunities that go out, we're able to put them there and push people towards knowing that those are out there. So if you go to the next slide, it's actually just a little call out of how some of the, or go back one, it's like a little call out of how you can do the sorting and finding information. And so it really helps you be able to look across the sector. But if you're looking for, tax credits versus grant funding versus technical assistance, you can find all of that information here. So just wanted to point that out and help folks, realize they can filter to find, very specific targeted opportunities. So if you go to the next slide, there were a couple I was going to mention specifically. The first was the 48C tax credit that the Department of Energy is helping run along with the IRS. It overall has $10 billion for projects in 3 different categories. One is for new clean energy manufacturing or recycling facilities. One is for critical materials facilities. And then one category is for industrial greenhouse gas emissions reduction projects. So DOE is already, reviewing applications for the first round of these, where $4 billion of the 10 was released as potential to be applied for. But so, coming up, the further $6 billion is going to be out there. So. And it does come in the form of a tax credit where you can get a 30% credit off of the total equipment cost. Those are if the apprenticeship and prevailing wage requirements are met. If those are not met, then you get a 6% tax credit. And so I've put some links. And so when we think about, prevailing wage and other workforce and, community things, that's a really critical part of this program. In addition to those requirements, there's also a set aside of 40% of the funding. So $4 billion of the overall $10 billion will be focused on former energy communities. So primarily coal communities where coal plants have shut down. And so being able to provide, new projects within those regions that can use that workforce. So there's a really, key aspect here on the community benefits and where these facilities are located. If we go to the next slide, there's another program that is currently running on advanced energy manufacturing and recycling grants. So this program has 2 categories that it focuses on. One is basically, supporting new or expanded manufacturing facilities. And then the other is installing energy or greenhouse gas reducing projects. So the first round of this funding was released earlier. I believe it was in March of this year, but it really focused just on the first types of projects, so new or expanded manufacturing. But there is another round that's going to be coming up in 2024 that's going to focus and have the ability to apply for greenhouse gas reduction projects and energy efficiency projects. And so these are also projects that would be located in or near eligible census tracts where, coal power plants or coal mines have closed. And it's really focused on small to medium facilities, but it's a great opportunity for a lot of the small to medium manufacturers to be able to invest in their infrastructure and in energy reducing technologies. And so wanted to highlight that program is going to be expanding and continuing to put out solicitations. And then the last program on the next slide that I wanted to specifically highlight was the Industrial Assessment Center implementation grants. So that program has $400 million available for the implementation projects that have been recommended by the DOE's industrial assessment centers. They've already put out some of that money, but we're expecting this program to run and have periodic, applications, over the next several years, just because there's a lot of money, and we can award projects up to $300,000 per manufacturer. And so that's for a 50% cost share. So you could get a $300,000 grant on an overall $600,000 project. And it's also targeted towards small and medium manufacturers. And it's one of the programs that we're actually running through an alternative vehicle. So you don't have to apply through the normal full DOE process. So that means the applications are much easier to work with, but still, having a focus on the communities that these manufacturing facilities sit in is important. So there are more opportunities for funding, and so please utilize those resources and the websites to be able to find one specific, to your facilities or your sectors. But I just wanted to highlight a few of these that are really focused on decarbonization of industrial technologies. So if you go to the next slide, I wanted to also share some of the guidance that is available for developing community benefits plans. So there is a website that we have that has a community benefit plan 101 webinar. There's a fact sheet. They even have a template that you can use, that you can access, and so that's a really helpful starting point. I wanted to also, make sure folks, when you look at a specific funding opportunity announcement, that's what a FOA is. I should have written that out instead of an acronym. But when you look at those, there are specific criteria within each one of them that will give you specific guidance on what that FOA is looking for in its community benefits plan. So really, be careful to look at that section and try to think about how the overall plans are being, tailored, and what those evaluation criteria are. Then I also wanted to have, wanted to show two of our sister offices, the Manufacturing Energy Supply Chains Office and the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. They both have guidance documents about putting together community benefits plans. And so really take advantage of those. They provide a lot of information and ideas for how you can get started with that. We've heard from a lot of manufacturers that they might not know where to begin or how to even get involved with their local communities, which we're going to hear more about with the following speakers. But these plans can also provide resources that can help you think and get started with thinking about, what should you include? How can you relate some of the examples specifically to your specific needs? And so I have a couple tips, which are probably pretty obvious, but still need to be said. The community benefits plans portion of our funding, that it's newer, but really don't ignore it. That does, happen, and folks are focused on maybe the technical portions of the funding opportunities, which we want to have, robust technical projects and proposals, but you are really going to be hurt by not having a robust community benefits plan. In some FOAs, it varies a little bit, but some FOAs, it can be almost 40% of your overall evaluation score. So you really want to make sure that you're not, giving up those points by not having a plan or having a very cursory plan. One of the main things that we also promote is being specific. So if you are talking about workforce programs or how your project might be connected, within a community, don't just say we're connected with the community. Provide some specifics about, is it a community college within that community? Are there specific organizations? What are the specific activities? So really being able to hone in and provide some details around that is really important, because that's the way that we can see that these are robust and that they have real connections versus just saying that they'll do some of the attributes generically. We really want to see some of those specifics and kind of metrics around how you're engaging and what specific activities are going on. And then lastly, it's never too early to start. So I saw 75% of the participants hadn't already been involved, but hopefully you will be. We have a lot of funding. We're really looking forward to highly impactful projects. And so if you know you have a project going on, or if you're already, you're manufacturing or a manufacturer and located in a certain area, it's never too early to start building some of those connections with your community, the workforce entities in the area. Having some of those already in place can be really helpful versus trying to build them later on and describe things that you're going to do. It's much easier to describe things you're already doing when you respond to a FOA. So definitely would encourage if you have some projects on your mind to really start before you even pull together some of the other portions of the application. So that was my last slide. And so I think I'm going to pass it back to Nora, and she can introduce the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's very informational. We'll invite back to have some discussions later. I would like to introduce our second speaker, Anna Johnson. Dr. Anna Johnson is a senior researcher in our industrial program. Her work has focused on integrating variable renewable energy into industrial processes, developing state-level decarbonization roadmaps for heavy industry, and connecting industrial decarbonization technology to air pollution reduction and community benefits. So today, Anna is going to present her analysis on clarifying community benefits of industrial decarbonization investments. Please take away, Anna.
Hey, thank you, Nora, and thank you everyone for having me. So yeah, as Nora introduced, I'm going to be talking today a little bit about how to better align localized community needs and potential benefits with the broader goals of industrial decarbonization. And really thinking about this sort of central problem, which is that while net zero emissions goals do not really tell us where and when we should prioritize technology investments. So we know that everyone is going to benefit from these deep cuts to carbon emissions, and that's how we tend to talk about these technologies. But we also know that the economic, health, and environmental benefits, co-benefits, tend to accrue primarily to local communities. And given that industry clusters tend to be unevenly distributed across the country, when we start to think about what benefits mean to communities, it starts to become a lot more complex. So this is just a map, for example, of where iron and steel manufacturing occurs in this country. And as you can see, it's not evenly spread. So obviously different benefits are going to accrue in different places at different rates. Next slide, please. And the other thing we know about industry is that the communities that are located today near these polluting heavy industrial facilities tend to be lower income. So here's some data from a recent great publication from the Sierra Club that shows that in general, there are a higher average proportion of populations around some of these facilities have lower income. Next slide, please. And they also are disproportionately experiencing some of the negative environmental impacts from industry. So for example, this shows that they tend to have poor air quality and greater air toxic cancer risk. Next slide. So as we go forward and we start to think about how we can roll out some of these technologies that we need to decarbonize industry, how can we also at the same time work to rebuild trust and directly benefit these local communities? Next slide. And this is just to show you a couple of headlines from some recent publications in my local area. And I think this really snapshots really showcase some of the main dilemmas facing us today, which is that while we know that industry provides pathways to the middle class for a lot of workers and much needed economic support, we still are seeing this trade-off between jobs and pollution. And the sort of local narrative around these industries still is really focused on that trade-off. And often when we talk about the health benefits to communities, we're really focused still on health benefits of closing industrial facilities. Next slide. However, we really think that today we have a lot of the tools and we have a lot of opportunities to really change that narrative. So these new technology pathways can really decouple industrial productivity from environmental pollution. And I think it's important if we're going to implement at scale to really start to change our narrative to focus on some of these important local co-benefits that are available as we to a lot of these industrial technologies. So these new technologies are cleaner and they're more efficient. So things like industrial heat pumps or green hydrogen, for example, are capable of replacing some of our fossil fuel powered technologies. We also have today clean renewable energy such as solar, wind, and battery storage that at scale can be implemented and is now more affordable than continued operation of coal power plants. And then finally, we have over $80 billion in federal industrial decarbonization funding, which is coupled with a whole of government initiatives center equity through the Justice 40 initiative to implement these tools. So really today we have kind of pulled together the political will, financial support, and some of the technologies we need to really move towards a cleaner and more productive industry in this country. But what I think we're still missing is some of this broader social support for this industry transition, and especially support from the communities that are going to be most directly impacted by these changes. And one of the key pieces I think we need to focus on going forward is really helping to clarify and explain the local pollution reduction potential of some of these new industrial technologies. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to share a couple strategies I think that really we need to be centering as we move forward, and to build community trust while also making progress towards some of this deep industrial decarbonization that we know the sector needs. So starting by first clarifying primary local stakeholder concerns well in advance of proposals for technology investments. So as Anne mentioned, really starting early and working directly with some of these community-based organizations to understand what are the community concerns in the regions around these facilities. So are they concerned about visible air pollution? Is it about smell, noise, land use conversion? All these things are going to be really unique to the local facilities. And then also working to quantify and communicate the local benefits to the community. So again, moving beyond just global carbon reductions to really thinking about what are the sort of criteria, for example, criteria air pollution reduction opportunities that can have a greater benefit locally. So as we know, incremental reductions in these pollutants are going to have a greater benefit in areas that already have poor air quality. And then also really one issue we see is that a lot of the technology analyses and decision-making tools that we have available to us right now are really focused heavily on thinking about economic and carbon reduction benefits, but again, are not also centering some of these pollution reduction needs. So it's not easy to look at, as we have multiple technology pathways for a sector, for example, it's hard to clarify and identify which of these technologies we could implement might have the greatest local benefits, although we can talk about the economics of different pathways and also the greenhouse gas reduction opportunities. And then I really think it's important to be able to link industrial community benefits by working between some of the federal agencies that are supporting both sides. So for example, collaborating across the EPA and the DOE. So we, for example, pairing some of DOE funding with the EPA funding in examples such as pairing community technical assistance for some of the fence line air pollutant monitoring with installation of new industrial technologies. So building trust for whether and how these technologies can improve air quality by also working directly with the community to fund some of their efforts. And also I think it's important to begin to work on developing some improved interpretive material that again clarifies the costs and benefits and risks of some of these new transformative industrial technologies so that companies, industries can proactively share with the communities this information, and also the communities themselves can access some of the information about new opportunities. Next slide, please. Oh, I think Archie may have skipped one. Oh, and then I wanted to close with some analysis that we've conducted that should be out in a couple of weeks, starting to really put these pieces together. So this is a map and snapshot example from this work showing the relationship between the total disadvantaged population within a 3-mile buffer of industrial facilities, here cement, as well as the CO2 and PM 2.5 emissions. So again, thinking about how we can align local air pollutants that are of concern to communities with the global greenhouse gas emission reduction potentials, and thinking about the communities that are going to be directly impacted around that facility, so that we can ensure that the greatest benefit accrues where it's needed. Okay, next slide. With that, thank you, and I look forward to talking more at the end.
All right, thanks, Anna. We have to pack a lot of information in 10 minutes. As Anna mentioned, we'll publish the study she just briefly talked about. We'll share more information soon. All right, our next speaker is Professor Pat Phelan from Arizona State University. Pat is also the Assistant Dean of ASU's Graduate Programs and the Director of ASU's Energy Efficiency Center. Pat worked in the federal sector too, and including serving as the director of NSF's Thermal Transport Process Program and as the Manager of Emerging Technology Program at the DOE Building Technologies Office. I also want to mention that Pat and his ASU team was recently selected by DOE to lead a new institute to drive industrial decarbonization through electrification of process heat. It's called APEX. Pat will share his experience of working with community colleges, nonprofits, and other federal agencies. Please take away, Pat.
All right, thank you very much. And indeed, I want to talk about a couple of different projects. So next slide, please. All right, so one of the projects that we've had for a number of years, and in fact, Anne mentioned this already in the broader context, is an industrial assessment center. And so if you don't know what that is, it's a university-based center supported by DOE that provides free energy audits for small and medium-sized manufacturers, as well as some other types of clients as well. So it gets a lot of students involved, but it actually gets us out into the community as well. Next slide. Now, as Nora mentioned, we're also having a rather large new project that's just now getting underway called EPICS, and that stands for Electrified Processes for Industry Without Carbon. And the PI for that is Professor Sridhar Sitharaman here at ASU. Now, this is a very large project with lots of universities involved, lots of companies involved, and lots of other partners as well. But as the name suggests, the whole point of this particular project is to somehow decarbonize or electrify the various industrial process heating that's going on, largely by burning fossil fuels today. Next slide. So one of the partners I wanted to emphasize is community colleges. And so we've used this quite a bit, especially in the context of our industrial assessment center. And so what I'm showing there is a little snapshot about a presentation video that we had made describing our internships that we offer in our energy efficiency center, specifically for community college students. Next slide. So, why would one want to work with community colleges? It turns out there are a lot of benefits, right? And so I highlight three of them here. So one is it's a great way to engage with local communities. And so, for instance, in a state like Arizona or most other states, the community colleges are distributed quite widely geographically across the entire state. So it's a great way to extend the reach of your organization into pretty far-flung corners of the state, including some rural areas. And then it also gives you an opportunity to train students or other workforce with really the appropriate skills, such as those internships that I mentioned a moment ago for the community college students. And so in our case, in our particular industrial assessment center, we bring these community colleges here to our campus for the entire summer. But before that even begins, we train them using some online modules that we've developed for this purpose. And so, not only do these community college students get paid while they're doing their internships, and in fact, while they're doing their training as well, a lot of them, or some of them anyway, if they end up going on to the four-year university, meaning our university, then we're able to continue supporting them as well. So not only, I think, do they benefit, but we also benefit a lot too from them. Next slide. So another great partner is nonprofit organizations. And so this particular one I want to highlight here is called Local First Arizona. And so when you read their mission statement that I presented there, you can see that their mission is to do a lot of what we're all trying to do as well through these community benefit plans. And so it makes perfect sense wherever you can really to partner with a nonprofit organization like this one. Next slide. So why work with nonprofits? All right, same question I asked about community colleges. Really, in this case, they're very well connected to businesses, especially in rural parts of the state. And so it's a great way for us to get essentially our foot in the door of these businesses, be they manufacturers or other types of businesses that could be anywhere throughout the entire state. And so it'd be very difficult for us to reach them if we weren't working with an organization like this. And so they've built up a lot of trust over the years because not only are they well connected to these various communities, but they're also connected to the state and in some cases to federal resources as well. And so they also can provide some additional resources to these various clients or various companies, for instance, connecting them to some grants or loan programs that they can take advantage of. Next slide. All right, now lastly, and this was actually brought up as well by Anna, the idea of working with other federal agencies, in other words, beyond the Department of Energy. And so one I want to highlight here is USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. So they have this very nice program called the Rural Energy for America program, or the REAP program. And so clients, meaning companies, in this case, it would be small businesses as well as farmers, can apply for grants to install energy efficiency or renewable energy technologies. Next slide. So we also have a small project through this program that allows us to do energy efficiency audits for their kinds of clients, meaning small businesses in rural areas as well as agricultural producers. And I do also want to mention that another agency that has also a lot of overlap in this area is EPA. All right, so like Anna mentioned as well. And so we're also a small part of the so-called EPA P2 or pollution prevention program as well. But I want to highlight that in terms of USDA, the state energy coordinator, I believe every state has one. In our case, she is very engaged, very proactive. And so that's a great way to get your foot in the door among different entities, different companies, and so forth. And so a lot of times these goals overlap, especially when it comes to renewable or sustainable energy. So in summary, 3 great potential partners. One is community colleges, one is nonprofits, and the other would be other federal agencies. Thank you very much. Now I'll turn it back to you, Nora.
All right. Thank you so much, Pat, for sharing experience from Arizona. Next, I would like to invite our last speaker, Dana Harmon, principal of Juniper Advisory Group. Dana previously served as the executive director of Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute, or TEPRI, and she held leadership positions in multiple energy technology startups. Dana is also on ACEEE's Research Advisory Board and helping us develop strategies to advance equity through our research. Today, Dana is going to present principles for companies engaging with local communities.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Nora. It's a pleasure to be with you all today and really appreciate you all hosting this important discussion. Next slide, please. Just quick little bit about Juniper Advisory Group. We're a small strategy consulting firm based in Austin that are supporting clients who are aiming to reduce social disparities in our energy and housing systems as we strive to address climate change. We've been privileged to work with some of the clients and programs shown here on the screen that are doing great work across the spectrum of an equitable energy transition, and recently involved in federal funding applications for Gulf Coast hydrogen hub development here in Texas, and a Texas coalition of municipalities and local governments aiming to bring benefits of solar to all Texans. So I'll talk a little bit about those experiences today. I want to admit that I'm not a DOE reviewer, so the perspectives that I'm sharing are based on my experiences in the work with our partners, working directly with communities, and really attempting to highlight the good work of environmental justice leaders and organizations and scholars that we can build upon. Next slide, please. So just to take a step back a bit, we certainly find ourselves at a very interesting moment in history. It's one of incredible opportunity that we've been describing, the opportunities presented by the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law that do allow us the opportunity to fundamentally reshape parts of our energy system. We've got a strong foundation set by environmental justice leaders and organizers who have worked for decades to pave the way towards more just systems. And we have an increased sense of urgency, not just from the federal government, but really with the increase in frequency of natural disasters. Even this summer alone, with the heat waves and wildfires, there's a growing collective movement to action, including by the communities in which many of you are working. And we've also got an incredible opportunity, as Anne mentioned, with the Justice 40 requirements associated with many federal funding opportunities that require 40% of the benefits of those investments to flow to disadvantaged communities. And together with those communities, we have an opportunity to find workable solutions. I wanted to mention, if you've not checked it out, DOE has published Justice 40 policy priorities that are worth evaluating. Those include reducing energy burden, reduced exposure to environmental harms, and increasing energy democracy and others. But this opportunity is met with a set of fundamental tensions. The momentum behind decarbonization is great, but the reality is, as Anna mentioned, that it may not address historic community concerns such as air quality or land use. Anna showed some great data that shows that fence line communities have long lived with the fact that some companies that are providing jobs and putting food on the table are also contributing to local pollution, to cancer clusters, and often bringing in more highly educated outside workers for the high-paying jobs that haven't been materialized in benefits for those communities. A topic of a lot of discussion in certain energy circles is that in order to decarbonize, we've got to build more clean energy infrastructure. And to do that, we need the support of environmental groups who may have historically, and other groups who may have historically put a lot of effort into blocking industrial development. And now we need to be on the same side of the table. When it comes to trying to develop community benefits plans and how those Justice 40 benefits may flow, there's an information imbalance that often exists as well. So the technical folks in industry may have a lot more information about decarbonization technologies and how they work and their benefits and how they may flow than community members do. And sometimes there are IP concerns or confidential information in the development phase that can't or won't be publicly shared, all of which can bring some challenges when it comes to transparent discussions and co-development of solutions on something that feels like a level playing field. And finally, while many industrial players have histories of community engagement and philanthropic giving through corporate social responsibility practices, there also likely need to be new relationships developed and new frameworks for engagement, which to do so well usually take longer to build out than the application timelines allow for many of the funding opportunities. I think the poll earlier showed that 62% of you who responded said the lack of staff time was already a challenge to developing a meaningful community benefits plan. But I was also encouraged by the low number of responses for the lack of consensus for what community benefits are, which hopefully means that mutually beneficial pathways are possible. So now we find ourselves in a place where we need to rethink our engagement methods and what community benefits of industrial decarbonization means. There's fundamental expertise in communities that's often underutilized. Folks with lived experiences know what their challenges are and have ideas on how to help solve them, but they need to be properly incentivized and compensating for that expertise. Justice 40 calls on us to find new ways to determine success of corporate social responsibility efforts and to co-define and deliver benefits to long underserved communities. We also need to go beyond one-way outreach and education to supporting structures for participatory decision-making, to identify areas where communities can actually influence projects in development, design, construction, and operations, and to make sure that we develop partnerships that are non-extractive and mutually beneficial. Next slide, please. A lot of my career has been spent working with research-focused NGOs, and I believe a valuable framework can be provided from the principles of community-based participatory research. This work comes from us to the folks at PolicyLink and UC Berkeley and other scholars who have built on this work over time. Here are a few selected principles that may have real applicability in industrial decarbonization that I'd like to go over. The first is recognizing community as a unit of identity. This principle emphasizes the significance of community for people and the importance of using that identification within the community as a starting point for the work. That definition extends beyond geography and racial identity and depends very much on community members' perceptions of what their community is. We also have to keep in mind, especially as it comes to community benefits planning, the DOE's or the federal government's definition of disadvantaged communities, and make sure that we're mindful of that. We want to take opportunities to build on strengths and resources already within the community. So not starting with a deficit mentality that's highlighting the problems or the challenges, but highlight that community members have a wealth of knowledge and lived experiences from which we can learn. We'd like to look for opportunities to facilitate collaborative and equitable partnerships. We'd like to talk about the importance of shared accountability in decision-making processes. And that's across all steps in the process, not just at the end. And then also recognize that there is an inherent imbalance in information and power, frankly, between industrial actors and community partners, and find ways to address those imbalances by building trusted relationships that are mutually beneficial. We'd also like to encourage looking for opportunities to foster co-learning and capacity building among all partners, building relationships that engage everyone in the exchange of knowledge and skills building and capacity. And remember that all partners bring a wealth of diverse experiences and skills. We'd also like to create systems that are iterative and cyclical, and where we can learn from one another, and ideally in the concepts of hubs that are industrial centers that are developing across the country, find ways to create shared learning spaces to leverage lessons learned. And then finally, looking for opportunities to use long-term processes and commitments to sustainability, so that it's not just for one DOE or EPA funding application, but really thinking about how to create sustainable structures that outlast funding opportunities. Next slide, please. Here, just wanted to share a little bit about some of the thinking that we've been doing with regard to participatory approaches. So of course, industrial decarbonization efforts will have their own objectives that may be completely independent from community needs and preferences. Separately, communities may have a whole different set of needs and preferences that may have little to do with industrial decarbonization. But the work is really in finding ways that the community and industrial players can collaborate on structuring benefits in a way that is mutually beneficial, again, throughout the throughout the project period, from planning and development through construction and implementation into operations and constant evaluation. I also wanted to share there on the right side of your screen a framework that's been quite valuable for us as we're thinking about holistic approaches to community benefits planning. And that comes to us through the CDC's social determinants of health. So really not just thinking about, potentially decarbonization if and for itself, but thinking about opportunities for education, access and quality, thinking about healthcare, neighborhood and built environment, social and community context, and economic stability. And perhaps leading processes to go through each of those social determinants of health to help build healthy, thriving communities through our decarbonization efforts. Next slide, please. Finally, I'd like to close with a concept developed in coordination with the Houston Advanced Research Center here in Texas. And this is a proposal that was born out of some of the hydrogen hub development work, but really thinking about, just similar to the way that we have industrial hubs or in clusters across the US, thinking about community benefits hubs. The idea here being to create forums or ecosystems in which communities may create holistic approaches to identifying needs and preferences and benefits, and identifying opportunities to engage with industrial decision making through community-wide benefits roundtables, where there are industrial players, labor, community, and workforce players all at the table, helping to define community benefits, and also recognizing the other set of holistic opportunities that community communities may want to address, including environmental justice, health and wellness, and housing, and looking for opportunities to coordinate funding across agencies for those perspectives. There's a lot more to be shared about this model, which can be that is available on the HARC website, and I'd be happy to take additional questions, but I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to close it there and turn it back over to Nora. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Dana. That concluded all of our presentations today. I would like to invite the speakers back on screen so we can have some Q&A and then panel discussions. I have a few prepared questions. Okay, wonderful. I can see you all. There is a question from the Q&A chat box. Others, if you have more questions, please type your question there. I would like to direct that question maybe to Anne. Allison asked, roughly 80% of the Wyoming economy specializes in coal carbon and account for 40% of the whole US production. I think she's asking, you know, how can we promote decarbonization while considering the impact on local economy? I think this question is not unique to Wyoming. What would you say from DOE's perspective?
Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about that. And actually, a lot of the programs that we've been working on, and specifically the second one I mentioned, it was the Advanced Manufacturing and Recycling Grant Program, specifically is focused on putting money into coal communities. And so those are ones that have previously shut down, but we're also looking at existing communities that are based around coal and looking at how we can bring manufacturing into those facilities that might be able to transition, you know, workforce from, you know, existing coal, you know, power plants or mines or other facilities and be able to provide as, you know, the administration is looking to shift off of coal, but it is extremely important. And we are really looking at how we can create a smooth transition that does not leave, you know, those communities behind. We've seen that happen in other parts of the country, and there's a huge push to be proactive within the administration and how we're designing those programs. So I think that the thought is, yes, you know, there's a push for decarbonization, but there's also a push to do that in a way that, you know, benefits equally, you know, and kind of replaces those jobs within the coal communities.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I will ask maybe a follow-up question to Dana, right? You talk about how to work with communities, and what do you think the steps communities adjacent to the industrial facilities can take, the steps they can take to position themselves during this clean energy transition? Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Sure. I think that there are plenty. And, you know, I think that the first is to go in with a mindset of respecting the expertise that's within the communities. Communities are often quite organized and have assets and may have done a lot of work that can be leveraged by your projects. One method that we've seen that has worked quite well is frankly hiring local community-based organizations who are, you know, often nonprofits to conduct outreach and engagement activities. We've often seen that trusted sources for information and word of mouth can be most effective. So set aside budgets to engage with those organizations to act as ambassadors or liaisons for projects. Another thing that I'd like to highlight is we've learned that municipalities and local governments often have structures that may be quite helpful, that could be useful. Whether created through, you know, for example, climate action planning processes or, you know, environmental justice advisory councils or community representative boards and commissions as part of local government structures, can all often be useful to participate in these processes. And then finally, incredibly important, and I'm sure most of the audience is well aware of this, but connecting with labor organizations locally is incredibly important. Labor is often very well organized and understands how to be effective, and making sure that those partners are at the table from the beginning, and not necessarily as an afterthought, but engaged as early in the process as possible.
Yeah. Thanks, Sana. Good points. I recall we discussed during the preparation of this webinar. You emphasized development of community benefits plan is not just to submit a proposal; it's a way to engage community and work together, eventually deliver the benefits. All right. So the next question from the audience is about heat pumps. I guess my quick reaction, Christopher was asking if the heat pump can be fully ready for high temperature industrial heat processes. The short answer is, heat pump may not be the right technology for high temperature heat. Pat, since you are standing up this institute to tackle that challenge, would you like to say something on that?
Yeah, and indeed, I agree with you, right? I mean, if you look to see what's available today commercially, maybe you can get up to perhaps 150 degrees Celsius or about 300 degrees Fahrenheit with an industrial heat pump. And so, it's a pretty tall order to ask a manufacturer to replace their current natural gas fired boiler or whatever with one that's powered by a heat pump. And so this is still definitely an area of continuing R&D. And in addition to EPICS, our own hub, DOE had a recent solicitation. They had a topic on exactly that, right? So DOE is supporting more projects currently to continue the development of high temperature heat pumps. So this remains an active area of research and development.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I mean, since I have you here, maybe you can share some of the challenges you encountered, right, when you put together your plan to work with the community, since the within the DOE proposal timeframe has been mentioned by our attendees as their top challenge. What's your thoughts on that based on your experience? What advice would you give to the attendees today if they want to do it themselves?
We have a huge advantage in that we are already huge. And so, my university is very large. And so there are many different parts of it. And so it's finding the right people who already have those connections, right? I think for a smaller company, I think it's finding the right partners. I think many of us here on this panel have said essentially the same thing, finding the right nonprofit, the right training organizations. That's a huge one, right? I think it's just identifying and trying to find not only the right organization, but this can also be challenging, the right person at that organization that you can work with.
Yep, totally agreed. I would maybe ask the same question and again to Anne, where can smaller industrial applicants who may not have the staff capacity to fully devote to this application and working with communities? Would you be able to give them some suggestions?
Yeah, I think there's one of the things, within the application process that, is taken into account in the evaluations is the size of the award and the, like the applicant types. So there are more, the more money you're applying for, the more we are expecting out of the community benefits plan. So, also when we have a lot of our funding that's targeted towards small and medium manufacturers, the expectations are, so just as a level set, the expectations are not that you have the same type of engagement level that, a big Fortune 500, thousands of staff, manufacturer would have. So we do keep that in mind. I think some of the things that we see being the most impactful is, if you have, where do you tend to get your employees? Like, is there a technical school in the region, or is there a community college? Just highlighting some of those things that you might already be doing. I mean, manufacturers are located within communities. There's usually some type of connections already going on. People just don't think of them as much. And so now we're trying to, push towards some of those activities and enhance them. But from the folks I've talked to, almost no one is doing nothing in their community because you live there. Most likely, your folks are working there. They do have connections with local chapters of things that your employees might be engaging in. So I would start there and, maybe see, like talk to your employees. What are they doing in their areas, and being able to build from some of those things, and not expecting, where Rome wasn't built in a day, and we don't expect that either. So I think keeping in mind some of those attributes to start.
All right, thank you. I will direct the last question to our researcher, Anna, and you were able to apply your analysis to some community benefits plans. So what were the surprises that you found through the process of putting together such a plan analysis, aligning all of the benefits?
Yeah, I think one of the pieces really was just that there really is sort of this a bit of a data gap, right, between being really clear on, as we are starting to try to put together these technology pathways to decarbonize industry, there's still it's not clear yet what exactly will result in terms of air pollution reduction. So I think there's a lot of space, especially about developing better interpretive materials, better educational materials, to start to reach out and build some of these cross-sectoral stakeholder engagement pieces, because I think there's a lot of alignment of benefits that we haven't yet really done a great job communicating. And I think, especially as some of these new projects get rolled out, I think there's a really great opportunity to let some of the first movers also be first movers in terms of sort of showcasing what these community benefits actually are on the ground.
That's great. We have a couple questions about the CBP sections. I think we'll follow up via email since we don't have time now. I do have a quick question. Maybe Dana, you can ask yes or no. Richard asks, are you currently piloting the community hubs concept?
We have applied for a pilot. I'll say it that way, but it's not yet on the ground. But please stay tuned. We'll certainly be publishing case studies and sharing what we learn.
All right, thank you. Definitely more need to be done. All right, that's the end of the scheduled time. And I would like to thank all of our speakers today for generously sharing your knowledge and experience. Kudos to Nick Roper and Archie Fraser on the ACEEE team for supporting today's webinar behind the scene. Thank you all for attending our webinar today. I hope you have some useful takeaways, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any additional questions or comments. So with that, everybody enjoy the rest of your day and week.